When have you witnessed pure evil? When I was a teenager, I used to volunteer in the preschool at church. One week I was helping with the 2-year-olds. We had a new girl come in. Tiny and adorable. By the end of Sunday school class, all the other kids were terrified of her. With absolutely no expression on her face, and totally silent, she bit a boy hard enough to draw blood, smacked a girl across the face, poured her drink out on another, and punched and kicked the other volunteer and me repeatedly. Not to mention dumping her snack on the floor while staring me in the eye, throwing toys in the garbage, and attempting to pull the microwave off the counter. I've dealt with difficult children before, but her total lack of emotion was very scary. I saw a man beating what was apparently his 3-year-old granddaughter with basically a tree branch. He was an elderly guy. He had to have been 70 or so. This was in the middle of the city, God knows where he even got that thing. This was in Buffalo, New York. Immediately got involved, and I and some bystanders got the cops, and they carted the guy away. He was going on and on about how many times he'd been arrested before, almost bragging. The girl had such sadness in her eyes that it never left me, and when I approached the guy to make him stop, the little girl actually ran up to him and hugged his leg. She must have been so used to abuse at that point that she didn't recognize how evil this person was. The look in her eyes was heartbreaking. I had gone to that city alone randomly to check it out and see what it had to offer, and that was the first thing I saw upon leaving my car. It broke me, and I just spent the whole night at the hotel, then just randomly walking the streets. A coworker from when I worked in a restaurant had an abusive boyfriend. He was a pretty big guy, easily twice my weight and only slightly taller in height. We're in the process of shutting down. It's officially after 12 when we close. I'm the closing manager and have to go home. He comes in to pick her up and tells her she will make him something to eat. She was about to do it, but I said no, we're closed. I'm not going to hold up my close by close to half an hour to give this dude free food. So, he goes up to the counter and tries to be intimidating, saying she will make him a pizza. I realize what he's trying to do, hold my phone in my hand, not recording or doing anything in particular with it, and hold my ground. He's officially got me mad because I don't consider being threatened well, but I'm the quiet type of angry person. I don't emote much or raise my voice. But something about how I interact in that state tends to terrify people, even this big dude. He eventually took himself outside until his girlfriend left. However, she never could be convinced to leave him in any permanent capacity. He would still come in from time to time, but never after the close. He also wouldn't come near or match his gaze with me after that. Think he might have ended up going to jail later. I want to preface this with the warning that this is obviously a huge outlier, and that's exactly why it's so horrible. But I was once at a concert, pre-COVID, where obviously people just sort of push their way to the front. So, this girl and her group get near the front, but there's a couple in front of them. The girl tries to push her way in front of them, but they're literally leaning on the crowd divider between the crowd and the stage, so there's really no way to squeeze in front of them. So, the girl starts screaming at the guy to give her some space or she'll make him. The guy's partner tries to calm things down and squeeze the two of them together a bit, but clearly not enough to create a whole extra space for this girl and her group. So, the girl starts screaming and calling for the security guards that are patrolling behind the crowd divider and the stage, telling them that the guy tried to misbehave. The couple called bullshit. A couple of us standing nearby called bullshit. But the security guards still kicked the guy, and his partner, out. And the speed with which the girl went from crying to giddily taking their spot, not just okay but clearly proud of what she'd done. Evil. My father. He was not a good person. But, on the other hand, my oldest brother, his first son, was quite literally a genius. The sort of kid that ends up in high school before he's a teenager, that graduates college before he can drive a car, and he expected that from the rest of his kids. Everything I was allowed to read was way above my age level: technical manuals, research papers and case studies, Lord of the Rings, War and Peace, stuff like that. Yet, I managed it, somehow. My sister wasn't so lucky. She struggled a lot, was yelled at because she was a 3-year-old but couldn't make it through the alphabet by herself. She couldn't add numbers. She couldn't really do anything that was asked of her because she was 3 years old. One day, my father just lost it because she got stuck after the letter E. I tried to help but was reprimanded for doing so, and finally, he just threw her against the wall. Then, he started screaming the alphabet at her. Finally, he punched her as he repeated himself over and over. I was frozen in fear. I didn't know what to do. He finally stopped when my mother started coming upstairs. I still remember the look on her face as she picked my sister up and took both of us out of the room. She was never the same after that. The bruises went away eventually, but she started having seizures. After that, she struggled with walking upright on her own, using the bathroom without assistance. Even today, almost 3 decades later, she needs full-time care and can't live a normal life. All because he wanted all his kids to be geniuses instead of just one. This is a few weeks after splitting with my wife, and I received a call from her phone with my 4-year-old daughter bawling her eyes out, saying, "Daddy, why don't you love us anymore?" She included my younger son. I got through that call as best I could, despite the shock I was in from receiving it. A few weeks later, when I picked my daughter and son up from their mom's house, I asked my daughter why she said that, and her response was that I hadn't picked them up, when I should have done, and Mummy had told them that I didn't love them anymore. Apparently, the mum had told them I was picking them up on a certain day and had got them ready, with coats and shoes on, etc., but I clearly hadn't arrived. I can't imagine the amount of stress that the children must have felt as time passed by, and I didn't arrive. Manipulating innocent children is evil. The day we got a lurcher puppy into our rescue. He had a broken leg that had been left to heal by itself. His entire paw was bent under his leg, twisted backward. He was covered in mange, ticks, fleas and was so skinny, I could circle his waist with my hands. His owner demanded him back. The owner was charged with animal abuse, a €1,500 fine, and a lifetime ban on owning any animals. I heard today he is appealing the decision as he claims he didn't know the pup was so sick. Yeah, bud, the leg healed, so it looks like a grasshopper is totally normal. Pup lived and has been rehomed, but the leg had to be amputated. He better not win his appeal. Went back to my home country a while ago and went on a little trip to a farm one night with my family and my uncle's family. Their kid was really weird, and when we got to the farm, he saw the dogs, went all the way around the fence, like a 2-minute walk, started picking it up one leg and dropping it straight to the ground as high as he could. I grabbed his hand and literally had to drag him away from them, but right before I could, he grabbed the dog and threw it onto the ground with all of his strength. The poor thing looked like it was on the brink of death. By the time I got to our parents, my mom was utterly confused, and his parents just laughed and said, "It's okay. I never want to see them again. The kid is an actual psycho and no one." My buddy took my husband and me to a business conference in which John Maxwell was guest speaking. The whole thing was super weird. Person after person got up on stage and talked about how successful they were. I showed off pictures of their luxury cars, mansions, ranches, etc., about 4 people in. I realized that everyone seemed to be loosely related or married into the main family, and it was a complete pyramid scheme. This conference was 3 days long. Day 2, the music was loud, and the air felt electric. Everyone was constantly cheering at every little thing. Talking about love, acceptance, the blessings of Jesus Christ. As if the Lord himself gave him that mansion, I can completely see how anyone could get sucked in. They did an altar call, and people ran up to the front. Let me remind you. This was a business conference. Day 3 was essentially a giant Sunday service. Began with worship music, and then John Maxwell took the stage and began talking about tithing. My husband leans over to me and says, "He looks like a big fat demon sitting up there." I am not lying. He did. That man oozed evil. I suddenly felt trapped. I realized all these poor young people were being scammed. And the audacity he has to prey on them using Christianity. Robbing them of not only their money but potentially their youth. It still makes me feel sick. My friend and I were out in the woods doing target practice with his .243 Winchester rifle. After about 5 minutes of shooting targets, he told me to go get another log, which was a foot-long log, what we were shooting at with a paper target taped on it. I went and got a log and placed it on the ground about 100 feet where we were shooting from, taped the target on, and then bang, I jumped back out of pure shock, looked at the log, and I saw a bullet hole around the bullseye of the target. Then he said, "Shit, I missed." Fairly certain a friend of mine's kid is a budding serial killer. I know for a fact that he's done some shady things to their animals, including locking one of their dogs in a shed in 115F heat, intentionally leaving a chicken coop unlocked, leading to the chicken being murdered by feral cats, and the reason why he's not allowed at my house any longer, throwing gravel at my dogs while saying you need to be more vicious. I've told his dad all of these things, but he plays it off as accidents, the dog and chicken, or just messing around, my dogs. I won't be surprised if, in 15 years, he does something that can't be played off. Before leaving the chicken coop open, he once put the chicken in the wicker chest they keep in the backyard for pool toys. She was in there for over an hour while they searched for her, and the kids stayed quiet. They only found her because she started pecking her way through the sidewall. My son's mom telling him at 6 years old, she hates him and never wanted him, while he cried and screamed, "Please mommy, this isn't fair." I've never laid a finger on a woman, but to get past her to scoop my son up and leave the house with him, I pushed her that hard. I'm shocked I didn't go to jail. To add to the pure evil, neither my son nor I have seen his mom since. She's not filed to go to court, but gone and had another child with whoever was stupid enough to put 50p in the prat. Never seen my son happier, healthier, and just all round better off without her in his life. When I was a kid, maybe 7, my mom took me and my cousin, who was around my age, to this indoor playground arena type thing for kids. They had giant styrofoam building blocks, and my cousin and I spent about an hour building an intricate castle out of these big blocks. Anyways, we're almost done with the coolest fort ever. All of a sudden, this kid around my age at the time comes and knocks the whole fort down, and he's ripping styrofoam blocks in half and throwing them at us and just being a little crazy. Anyways, he all of a sudden runs back to his mom, who starts praising him. Yes, praising her son for doing that, giving him high fives, and she is laughing hysterically. The mom sees me standing there sad, confused, and teary-eyed in a pile of my wasted work. I watched as she got this grin on her face, walks up to me, bends down, puts her nasty face in my face, and says, "Aw, are you gonna cry?" And then she starts laughing at my cousin and me, then walks away. We were like 7, and she was in her 30s. But, I just will never understand what the joy she got from any of that was, and it was at that moment, I kinda realized not everyone is nice and are going to be nice to you. I'm not entirely sure if this person is actually evil. Turns out my mother is, for other reasons, but when I was 4 or 5, I did not know that. Her then husband abused her physically, and I loved my mom and wanted to help her, so I stepped between them and said some things kids say. He proceeded to smack me over the head with the flat of his hand, and threatened to kill the family dog, which I loved dearly, if I didn't go away. Scared, I went away and cried, while he went to get a very scared dog, came back with it, and in front of me snapped its neck. It was a fairly small mixed breed dog. I will never forget the sound of the neck cracking, and the subsequent fall of the lifeless corpse, that was once a dog I slept next to, onto the cement floor. Yeah, he was fun. Great fun. Back in the day, when I first moved out on my own, I rented a room with one of my best friends, Dave, from high school in an old beat-up house. We were pretty bad at managing our money and often ran out days before payday, usually running out of stuff to eat. One specific day I shall never forget, I was sitting at my computer, completely starving, payday at least 2 days away, no food in the house. My room was on the opposite side of the house. I'm chatting with Dave via AIM and I mention how hungry I was. Hey replies, "I put an emergency Twinkie pack in your Star Wars tin bank." I had gotten a cheap little SW tin bank I threw change into. I basically knew he was bullshitting because there's just no way, but I picked up the bank and shook it and I felt something in there that was basically a solid mass that I believed could in fact be a pack of Twinkies. I immediately got my hopes up with joy at the sound of a delicious Twinkie. I open it up with haste only to find 2 rolls of old Pogs glued together. In that moment of sheer disappointment, I heard a cackle behind me. I turned to find Dave in my doorway grinning at me like the Joker. He says, "I knew you'd look fat ass." And then skips away.